Okay, we are back. Welcome to the Gamer Librarian Podcast. We are on episode 116, and I am your host, Adrian. We are in for a treat at the end of the year. For video games, for the era of gaming, and a lot of other things manga, world news. There is a lot changing in the world. So, we're just here to talk about it day by day. And overall, there's a few specific things that I wanted to talk about just to get a sense of where we are. You know, we've been doing this podcast for 116 episodes, going on for a while. Don't know what's going to happen, but, talking about this stuff is crazy. And there's a lot changing in the world. One of them is video games, right? There is a lot of things with video games that I love, and there's a lot of things that I hate. And it seems like the things that I dislike, things that I wouldn't want in games, things that I wouldn't vote for or want to pay for, just keep coming more and more in abundance throughout these games. Things like battle passes, DLC, paid cosmetics, or like paid rewards or guns or, pay to win stuff. I remember in games where you got it, you paid for it, you have a disc or a copy of it, and everything's on there. I remember that era. And now there's so many games getting just more and more and more content over time. Games are becoming things where you're not supposed to spend hours, 30 hours, 100 hours on these games now. You're almost expected to dump in 500. And time is a big consumable. It's a big uh you know cost. It's something that you can't get back, which is insane. So, a lot of these games are getting very, very long, and for price range for them, for maybe content replayability, not a whole lot can be said for where games are going with that. It's hard to value what content you can get out of a game. What is the enjoyment? What is fulfilling for that game? Which is disheartening. I've played Battlefield 6 the most than I've played any shooter in the last 10 years. We just reached 115 hours on the PS5, which is insane to think that I've played this game just as much as I played something like maybe Modern Warfare 2, maybe Black Ops 1, when I was a high schooler. I had all this time in the world. And now this game has a battle pass system, and it's like I've already mostly unlocked stuff, and now it's just kind of XP to get more. And until they do updates to add more guns, there's not a whole lot to really yearn for or strive for, except for skins or customary emblems or that stuff, right? Attachments and the guns are all fine. And I started the game where wins meet. This is a game where like most of the cosmetic stuff is paid for. You pay for a lot of it from what I see, but then there's maybe consumables that you can use for XP. I haven't really looked at it, but this is a game that's free to play, and you can just play it solo and with people and do it at your own leisure. It's very hard to say where the price of games and the kind of amount of enjoyment content that you get to enjoy from it can be said. Do I really want to go back and play Battlefield 6 for another 100 hours in between these seasons with these very rare updates? where Ren's is getting a big, amount of content from what I see. It has a lot of stuff. And so these games, maybe it's bloat, maybe it's just trying to pad things or stretch them out so playtime is longer, meaning that the player numbers are there, right? Like XP for whatever you earn, or whether it's just like collectibles and, you know, events, multiplayer events. It's insane to see that all these games are kind of the best we've ever had before, like in the last 20 years in terms of like quality, maybe. But for the real content that you get out of it, is it all that much? Is it what we've been expecting? I would say no. If you look at all the games from the past and what you might expect games to be in 20 years, you know, it's it's crazy. And they already cost so much. These games, they cost so much to make, not just time for developers, which is a big part of it, is how long these games take to make, along with their amount of manpower, the amount of people you have. And then you have advertising, marketing, that stuff already adds on top of it. And this is the big point where we want to talk about is it also costs. Ever since the Game Awards, we've been seeing people post that they don't have the 1 million or whatever to post a 3-minute trailer, or the 450,000 for a 60-second trailer, when you could just put it online. You can just put it online. It's insane. And so for the Game Awards to be a place where, like, yeah, it costs money to promote your game, but now it doesn't have that feeling of like, we want to share and express games and just in general. Now, I think like E3, they already have that same system probably, right? You pay to go there and stuff. That's a very physical venue. But, you know, it costs money for the Game Awards to exist. Does it need to exist if that's the cost for the kind of things that we saw there? I don't know. Not really. Not a lot of the big three are there. It didn't feel like it was that massive collaboration of gaming coming together. It feels like if you can make it, if you have the money to put your spot there, yeah, go for it. But Nintendo, not really there. They just advertise our new system and some of the new games. Xbox, mostly just Game Pass, you know, advertisements. I think it's pretty crazy for where gaming is going. Yeah, when I think about what it took for Larian Studios to make maybe like Baldur's Gate 3 after their entire legacy of Divinity, how much did that statue make already on top of the ad spot for the cinematic? How much it cost to make the cinematic? Is Divinity something that's like overall worth it? Is Divinity going to be a franchise that's propelled into this massive fandom the same way that, you know, they were because of if you try to take it away from the D&D aspect of it, the label from D&D, I think they might have a chance to do that. I think if you even just take away the D&D side of it, I mean, Divinity has its own type of setting, its own, probably rules, layouts that are very similar to D&D, but they really don't, you know, meet one to one. It's not a bad thing, but I think that for what they're going for, from what I saw from the cinematic trailer, is a far more grittier and dark type of story. And maybe it won't be as goofy, haha, as a lot of the Divinity games kind of have. Baldur's Gate has a lot of that, but maybe something more like Diablo, right? Which cool, could be really cool to play a really deep D&D type game that's not inherently you can be goofy haha and good or goofy haha and bad. It's just like things are always bad all the time, but there's a little lightheartedness, maybe a little bit, and then maybe a little bit comedy, sly jokes, dark, gritty humor. I feel like I'm disappointed over that announcement. I just don't feel like was Divinity really the franchise for such a massive event for gaming? I mean, it's just an announcement for a returning franchise that is only getting this big because of its last game. That's is really cool, but it's not like a big returning video game franchise. I mean, they toted Tomb Raider coming back, and that was leaked a few hours before or a day before. It doesn't feel like there's the big celebration of gaming and gaming history and that legacy. It feels like they're always locked behind the exclusivity-ness to it still, if it's not like a crossover DLC thing or some big, massive like crossover event like Sonic, Pac-Man, or whatever those racing games have. Yeah, all of it has to do with AI. I mean, AI is going to make a lot of that easier. Production on the Game Awards, creation of video game trailers, releasing video game trailers. I think that's crazy. Games like Expedition 33 getting their nominations and the awards taken away because of AI stuff. I'm not a hater of AI. I'm not a hater of people using AI to make video games. You know, I don't necessarily consider making video games the same as like putting paint to canvas, but I think the AI is just the same tools like a brush, like a canvas mat, or easel, or whatever. I think it's the same thing. It's just a tool, and maybe there needs to be ways for open communication of how it's used, applied in game development. Are we going to start getting little game dev diaries in every copy of games that you buy? Like, oh, here's where we used AI. You can find it right here. It's in the code. Here's the artists that use it. Are we talking about that? Is AI going to now have to be inherently credited throughout video games? I don't think that's super needed because the way I see it is like, yeah, these big companies, publishers, manpower, whatever behind them, they can pay for AI robots and the minimizing whatever. But you look like at the individual, one person could make like a Stardew type Valley game, a Bloodborne type game, or even a Tetris game or a fighting game. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. So, you know, I'm always going to be on the cusp of I'm here for humans making video games, any type of art. And I don't really care about the tools that are done to do it. So overall, video games, everything's changing because of AI. And, we mentioned a little bit about video games, right? There's a lot we haven't finished this year. This year has been a roller coaster. There's been a lot of things that we learned about the games that we're going to pursue here, talk about. It's going to be something. I mean, the library of games coming out in the future doesn't really seem massively enticing. I think the biggest game that I'm looking forward to that I have seen gameplay for is Phantom Blade Zero. That's probably it. Just out of anything else, other than like Haunted Socketeer or the Cult of the Lamb DLC that's coming out, that's probably the only game that looks like it's the next evolution of gaming, third person action RPG type gaming. I'm in for it. But, you know, we're behind on games. We have to finish Metroid Prime 4. That is a backtracking beast. I don't dislike that. It's just I don't like the motorcycle open world portion of it. I find that to be very boring. I wish that wasn't really a part of this game for now. We had just got um, the ice gun, and we're looking for like I think a lava upgrade for the suit. The game's very hand holdy. It tells you where you can go with the audio dude. That's not inherently a bad thing, I think, for games to try and make the Metroidvania type genre appealing for newer gamers and all that stuff. Those kind of inherent assisting tools kind of do need to be there because you want to mitigate people getting frustrated, returning the game, or just looking it up online and then getting frustrated with all that and then returning it anyway. That's the course of action. And then Metal Gear Solid 3. We're going to finish that eventually. That's just going to be very slow. Still going to emulate Metal Gear 4, but we're waiting on that Volume 2 announcement, probably something at a Sony event, which is going to be crazy. And until then, probably the Night Rain DLC. Haven't beaten the Angel Beast monsters or whatever, or even gotten to the Dreadlord. And then Battlefield 6, right? That's pretty much the only games we're doing at the end of the year here. Now, besides games, we try to delve in a lot of other stuff. Comic books, novels, even, biographies. But there's been one format that we've been hitting hard consistently, and that's manga. You know, there's definitely been a gap, like a void in my interest in anime. And sometimes I just don't want to watch an anime for like 30 minutes and just sit there on a screen. And when I could play a video game, right? And now I was in an era where like I could maybe play video games while watching anime, right? Certain single player games you could do that, Stardew Valley, or like, maybe even Battlefield 6, some people. But for the most part, manga has gotten me through a lot of my normal everyday day job, reading manga on my Shonen Jump needs to sponsor me because I talked to them. Now listen, I was in the top 10% of readers for Dan to Dan on the app. I mean, that's super cool. Really, really awesome. We haven't read chapter 221 yet, but One Piece chapter 1169. I mean, we are in for a treat here. There is something coming up very soon. Elbath is probably going to really, really kick off, or something's going to happen around chapter 1200. You probably see that we just got word of the Forbidden Devil fruit. That might be referring to the fruit that Luffy ate. It might be referring to that, but we really can't be sure with that. I don't know if there's a previous reference to it, but pretty cool. And then we're having full context for the King Herald versus Loki, what really went down. I think that was obvious, right? I think that, I've been reading stories, watching movies, playing video games for a long time. It's obvious that like the way they told the story, and even like stories from like One Piece past island arcs, there's been like, oh, characters framed for someone else's murder, woo. That's always happened. But now that we've gotten full context for the past event of Elbath, we're really just here now for what the Celestial Knights and Emu know. That's really just it. Those are the only like side stuff that we don't know. Maybe like Teach. I think there's a little bit of Teach's backstory that would really fill in the gaps. And then something we've been waiting for so long. Dragon, Luffy's supposed father. Crazy to think that we still don't know what it is after getting this far, like their relationship, anything like that, that full context. When we do know that, it's going to be incredible. But, One Piece has been pretty much the manga that we've stuck with week by week. That's only because it's second to Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is not the manga that we want it to be right now, but it's still supposedly going to come out next year. I'm very excited. And because that's been on hiatus for a very long time, we've been intermittently going in between other mangas just to fill the void, right? I think I would be a lot more gung ho on reading manga just on a weekly basis if I was looking forward to Dragon Ball, right? One Piece really vibes with that. It was like my hero for a while. And yeah, besides like small fields like Berserk and JoJo's, I don't really try to come back too much for them. Then I try to keep up with. There's Black Clover, but there have been a few that, we've forgotten. Reject Ranger, Zatspel, we'll have to get back on those extremely soon. I think the release schedule for Zatspel is a little more hectic now. I don't think they're actually having new chapters. I haven't gotten a notification from Twitter, so I don't really know. And then, we read new ones. And new ones are like ones that I've never seen before. Like, I don't even know what this is. And this started a lot with something like, I think, Berserk. Because when we read Berserk, oh man, I think like 2 years ago now, maybe a year ago for the podcast, I was like, should have read this before, should have immediately consumed this before. And to me, something like Berserk and other animes, there's always been like that. I know I've seen it and heard of it, but I've never really fully dived into it and given it like a real stretch. I'm sure I maybe started like the first 2 or 3 episodes, but one of them I've heard about for a long time, and that's Gantz. Gantz by Hiru Oku is something that I thought, if this doesn't look to be interesting, then I'll probably just drop it. Right. I think that everybody usually comes to the notion of that. And I try to approach everything like I'm going to try to get to the end as hard as soon as possible, unless something grabs me, then I'll take my time with it and try to, you know, see what's happening from the perspective of the story and see what they're trying to tell. Because a lot of the beginnings, they're not very grabbing for a lot of stories, a lot of games. Or it's hard to get other people or a reason to attach to them. So for something like Gantz, the premise was so odd that it almost felt to me something like, from what I've seen with like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure from a bystander side, was just like, this just seems like silly, stupid nonsense. It, just goofy. But here for Gantz, we are on more of a mature vibe. And this is a different type of story. I have no clue what's happening, right? Like, I try to make some predictions or ideas by the end of a lot of these stories and see where we go. But it is, it is hard to understand what is happening on like a grander scale for something like Gantz. We have these games where if you die, if you've been someone who died, you have the opportunity to regain life if you get 100 points in the game Gantz. And in this game, you have to kill aliens, right? I do the quote because later on it becomes something other than aliens for a brief moment, it seems. And then there's other types of side stuff happening that I think I have an idea what's happening. These vampire type characters, I think they're old players. But yeah, these games are getting really wild for our main character. And I'm very intrigued. We're on chapter 188. I'm going to read it to the end. Like, I'm massively invested now. It's been something that like I look forward to reading, and I should have read it before. I should have watched the anime before. I found out there's a video game. I think I'm obligated to at least try it out, do it on emulator at the very least. And there's a lot of very mature type themes here. It reminds me and really makes me want to reread Parasite Maxim, which I don't think we did here for the podcast. So that might be something really cool to do really quick after reading Gantz, do a reread. We don't really do a lot of rereads of mangas, but maybe we'll do that. And yeah, Gantz has been something that's been a big surprise. So until we get further into that story, because it is incredibly insane, hopefully you guys get a chance to watch it or read it, because I try to not miss out on certain things, right? FOMO or whatever. It's just fun entertainment, especially during downtimes. Now, before we get to the end, Nurse Jackie. We finished Nurse Jackie. What an incredible, incredible show. The main actress in it, the wife from Sopranos, incredible. I feel like it went the Breaking Bad ending, and that's controversial. It's just kind of maybe a cop out. I could have done more with the show, but it was definitely seemed like it was getting to an end. Very cool. And then we just watched Two for the Money with uh, Matthew McConaughey, Training Day, Denzel Washington. And then we rewatched Greenland because there's the sequel for the movie coming out next month, which I never thought we were getting. I never thought we were getting a sequel for that, which is incredibly insane. So seeing that movie again this morning was very fun. But this is the second to last episode of the year. Yeah, next episode will be goodbye 2026, and we'll see what gaming has in store. Not usually a lot of game announcements in between the weeks at this time of year, but there might be some small stuff that's really looking forward to. But that Dragon Ball announcement, I'm really hype. There's that season one ending of One Piece, which is pretty insane. And then with that remake retelling story coming out, or anime coming out, yeah, it's going to be a crazy time for video games and anime next year. So until then, peace.